Hi there, welcome. I am assuming that you are watching this because you're probably experiencing some type of maybe unexplainable weight gain, maybe some additional body fat accumulation in certain areas of your body, maybe specifically around your midsection. Maybe you just have a lot of chronic fatigue, not sleeping well, waking up through the night, maybe a pretty intense sugar cravings, and maybe some brain fog and cognitive dysfunctioning. Hey there, my name is Bob Sibahar. I'm a performance dietitian and the founder of Energy Performance. And today, I want to talk to you about hormones. It's not you, it's your hormones. What do I mean by this? Well, all of those associated challenges I led in with, those are actually causes of hormone misfiring. So if I've got your attention, let's move on with this. So if you've ever tried to lose weight or body fat, and you know what people tell you to do that, the best way to do that is just eat less and move more, right? Well, if that actually worked, you wouldn't be watching this right now. So what if the chronic fatigue, the sugar cravings, the stubborn belly fat, the brain fog, what if those are actually not your fault? I know it sounds funny, but what if your hormones have actually just been misfiring, which send mixed signals to your metabolism to not function properly? Well, that's what I'm going to chat about today. So, hormones are absolutely the key to weight loss, key to fat burning, better mental functioning, and definitely more sustained energy and less fatigue. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through a few key hormones that work together. And I'm also going to give you some ideas of how to tweak these to try to get them back on your side so you can achieve your health, your fitness, your longevity goals. It's actually not as difficult as a lot of people think. So it's not really about willpower, right? It's not about, oh, I'm not going to eat that cookie. I shouldn't have this. I shouldn't have that, right? It's not about counting calories. It's not about exercising more. Now, I'm not saying calories and exercise are not important, but what I'm saying is that just by having more willpower or more motivation, it's not going to get you there, right? So, all of these things have very little to do with this whole calories in, calories out balance equation, right? It has everything to do with your hormones. So think of it like this: hormones are like the software that tells your metabolism and your brain what to do. Very similar to software on your phone or your computer, right? Now, common to technology, if software gets buggy, it doesn't just matter how clean or how good you eat. Your body is not going to respond the way it used to. That is why we cannot eat or exercise the same like we did 10, 20, 30 years ago and actually see the same results. It's not going to happen. You know why? Because our hormonal firing patterns change as we age. It's very simple. But you know what? You are not alone. We are all aging. We all experience these problems. I've seen it over and over again with all of the clients that I've helped, men and women. Typically happens in ages 35, 40 and older, including with myself. I saw it when I was in my early 40s. I literally experienced hormone misfiring, and I was kind of scratching my head at the time. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is interesting, right? Then when I hit my 50s, it was even worse. I saw a lot of body fat accumulation in places I've never seen it before. And I'm thinking, you know what? I'm a registered dietitian. I'm a physiologist. I can handle this. Of course, I'm just going to do what? Exercise more, eat quote unquote better. You know what? It doesn't work because it's not going to help with the energy crashes, the sleep, patterns that get all wonky, right? And I don't know about you, but when you work out, maybe they feel harder, right? So it's not you, it's your hormones. The good news, though, is once you understand how these hormones misfire, and more importantly, some things you can do from a nutrition and exercise and lifestyle perspective, it's pretty easy to fix. You can get your system running again pretty efficiently, right? So take this example of a 50 something year old ultra runner who was gaining body fat, was having more fatigue, and he said, you know what? I'm just going to eat better. I'm going to have more carbohydrates. I'm going to have more protein. I have more fat, but I'm also going to run more because you know what? I'm accumulating more body fat. So therefore, I'm just going to run it off. Well, guess what? It worked the exact opposite. He actually put more fat on his body, was more fatigued, had more brain fog, and was actually more moody. And by the way, that 50-something-year-old ultra runner was me. And so I came to figure out years ago that over exercising, just throwing some band aids at this, or just trying to eat the same, or even bump it up or change it a little bit here and there, it doesn't work because your hormones are the software that connects all of the messages being sent in your body. Now, I am going to make this as simple as possible on this webinar. I'm not going to make anything complex. I'm not going to get too sciencey on you with this, right? I'm going to simplify this. I'm going to show you how hormone misfiring is contributing to your potential weight gain, body fat accumulation, brain fog, chronic stress, sugar cravings, and yes, sleep issues that you may be having. So as we go through this webinar, remember a couple things. Weight gain and body fat accumulation, it's not about discipline. It's about hormone misfiring. Brain fog is a signal that something else is happening and going on in your body. It's not a symptom, it's a signal that we need to listen to. Chronic fatigue, listen, it's not about laziness. It's your hormones conserving energy. And sugar cravings are actually your body's cry for better balance, better blood sugar balance. So I'm not talking about going on any fad diets or extreme exercising. You don't need that, right? This is just simply learning about how to work with your body instead of your body becoming more of your enemy and working against you. Okay, let's start with hormones. What are hormones? Well, they're messengers, right? They send messages throughout the body. That's very simple, right? They act as chemical messengers. They regulate a whole bunch of things in the body like metabolism, blood sugar, cognitive functioning, and mood. All of the things that are associated with what I led into this webinar with. Now, when they misfire because of aging or because of other things, what happens is it manipulates how they interact with all of these cells in your body. So that can lead to changes in weight, changes in energy level, body fat, mental focus, and certainly sugar cravings and sleep patterns. How do we know what's going on? Well, obviously, when it comes to hormone misfiring, we need to know what's going on inside the body. So the first step is actually for you to have your hormones measured. Test, don't guess, right? So when you have your hormones measured, these are the key ones. There are over 200 hormones in your body, but these are the key ones that we want to talk about. We really want to focus in based on maybe the potential symptoms that you're having and why you're watching this webinar. So we're going to talk about briefly today insulin, cortisol, thyroid hormones, DHEAS, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, and vitamin D. Let's start with insulin. So insulin you may have heard of. It's a wonderful hormone that does many things in the body. And one of the main things it does is it helps regulate blood sugar. So when you eat something that raises your blood sugar substantially, insulin will come in and actually lower your blood sugar. So insulin allows blood sugar to get into your cells. Fantastic, great, right? However, when blood sugar is high and thus insulin is then high, it actually will do a couple things in your body. It can trigger more sugar cravings, not a great thing. But even more importantly, a high level of blood sugar leading to a high level of insulin can actually turn off your body's ability to burn fat. Think about that for a second, right? You do not want that because you want your body to burn more fat for health reasons, longevity reasons, and fitness reasons. Now, a little bit farther on this path is something that is called insulin resistance and insulin sensitivity. We want insulin sensitivity. We want our body, specifically our pancreas, where insulin is secreted from, we want that to be sensitive to insulin because the opposite, insulin resistance, can actually contribute to weight gain, but also many disease states like type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and other metabolic disorders. So what we want to do is actually control blood sugar by pairing carbohydrate, protein, and fat in such a manner that it doesn't spike blood sugar. We want to control blood sugar because controlling and optimizing blood sugar actually reduces the insulin response, therefore promoting more insulin sensitivity versus insulin resistance, right? So how do we do this? Well, I use with my metabolic efficiency training concept, I use the hand model as a great example. And if you're not familiar with this, I'm not going to take too much time to explain it here. You can look on other parts of the Energy Performance website, look up metabolic efficiency training. I have a book on it. I've got a lot of great resources. But basically, if you associate the ratio of carbohydrate to protein, and you get that ratio correct, and usually it's right around, I would recommend like 2 parts carbohydrate to 1 part protein, that will stabilize your blood sugar pretty well and thus control insulin. Okay, but what I want to also do is describe how I've taken people through this before and show you what happens when you measure hormones, and more importantly, when you have someone interpreting them and guiding you in the process of creating custom meal plans, creating exercise programs. So Becky, I took through this one of my programs, and we did a full hormone panel testing. And what we realized and found was that Becky had an extremely high insulin level, like almost high enough to be insulin resistant, like really borderline, which was causing her to not be able to lose weight. And she was storing more body fat. She was also having hot flashes and she wasn't sleeping well. So, can a hormone induce all of those? Yes, it can, by the way. Now, throughout the process of working with Becky and creating a custom meal plan and exercise plan based on her hormone misfiring patterns, she was actually able to lose 4 pounds in 1 month. Her clothes fit better, her hot flashes disappeared, and she was finally able to sleep through the night without waking up, just by associating her meal plan and exercise plan based on her hormone results. Now, the next hormone I really want to focus on, because this gets talked about a lot in media, is cortisol. Cortisol is a stress hormone that is secreted by your adrenal glands. Cortisol can be high or low depending on stressors in your life, different types of stressors, right? Could be exercise, could be social, could be family, could be career, could be any type of stress. Now, what happens here is that cortisol regulates your metabolism. And when it's too high, it can actually lead to an increase in appetite and an increase in your body storing more fat, particularly in one area, and that is around the waist. That is actually, if you are over 40 listening to this, you can relate to me with me right now, right? You're like, yep, that's exactly where I have my body fat accumulation. Listen, that is the prime location that body fat gets stored as we get older because of hormone misfiring. So, what I do want to talk about also is when cortisol is measured in a normal blood work test, it is only measured as a one-time measurement, right? That does not provide the data that you need, or whoever is going to interpret this, that they need to actually form a plan for you. So what I recommend is diurnal testing. What that means is that you will take 4 saliva samples throughout the day at different intervals, and then a cortisol curve will be created based on your saliva samples. What that gives us is the cortisol curve. So we know what a normal cortisol curve should be. So for example, when we first wake up in the morning, cortisol is at its highest. And then throughout the day, it should come down very nicely. But if we see aberrations and changes in that, we know something is going on. It could be chronic fatigue. It could be chronic stress. It could even be burnout, which we don't want to see, but sometimes that happens, right? So when we see high cortisol levels when they shouldn't be high, we're talking about the disruption of sleep patterns, which can lead to chronic fatigue and just this cycle of being tired all the time, which obviously decreases your productivity and your daily functioning, let alone your food intake patterns and your exercise patterns. Now, in addition to that, high cortisol also affects your sleep. So it can actually lead to more restlessness and insomnia. So usually when I see people with higher cortisol levels, the diurnal throughout the day, usually they're having some pretty big issues with fatigue throughout the day. Now, with all of that said, with cortisol, some nutrition things that we can do to reduce cortisol when it is too high is time carbohydrates appropriately. Remember when I said cortisol levels spike in the morning, that's when they're highest? Well, sometimes cortisol gets too high in the morning, and that could be a result that the body just needs nourishment. So what we do usually recommend is timing carbohydrates around the time, probably 30 to 60 minutes within the time you wake up to help bring that cortisol level down a little bit. So carbohydrate timing is really important. So is this. If you have too high of a cortisol in the morning, do not skip meals in the morning and do not exercise fasted, because that will increase your cortisol even more. Additionally, caffeine, if you're a caffeine user in the morning and you have a overly high cortisol level in the morning, drinking caffeine on an empty stomach is also not a great thing. So you always want to have something in your stomach, some type of food, before you consume caffeine if you have overly high cortisol levels. Now, other things you can do to help manage cortisol is increasing magnesium-rich foods and having more electrolytes through the day, because electrolytes actually support normal adrenal functioning. Now, I also worked with another woman, Teresa. She could not lose weight and actually had memory lapses. And when we looked at her hormone testing, what they showed were her cortisol levels were actually her curve that I just explained. Those were indicative of chronic fatigue. And she had estrogen deficiency and a low vitamin D. So she had a lot of strikes against her, right? Again, using that information, I created a structured and a customized meal plan for her and an exercise plan that supported her goals. And in 4 weeks, Teresa was down 9 pounds, no chronic fatigue symptoms, no brain fog, and had very high mental clarity and no memory lapses. And take another client example, Jessica, who I worked with. This was she had extremely bad brain fog and very reduced cognitive functioning. And when I say no energy for 4 hours in the afternoon, I mean after she ate lunch, she had to lay down on the couch literally for 4 hours. She was so fatigued, she could not do anything and she could not function. Now, looking at her hormone levels, her cortisol was off the charts. Her curve actually indicated burnout, not chronic fatigue, not chronic stress, but complete burnout. That takes a little bit longer to come back from. But again, I structured her meals, I structured her nutrition and her exercise program to improve the symptoms that she was having, but also in line with her hormones that we had tested. And in 4 weeks, no brain fog anymore. Her cognitive functioning was much better. She was on the road to recovering from her burnout. It wasn't perfect yet, right? But again, like I said, burnout takes usually months to actually recover itself, right? And she wasn't having the fatigue in the afternoon where she didn't have to lay down for 4 hours. She actually could do stuff. And that in itself was probably the huge success for her, because that is what was her biggest pain point, is just not being able to do anything in the afternoon. Okay, let's move to thyroid hormones. Okay, so we always think of this. Whenever there's weight loss or weight gain or body fat goals, it's always about the thyroid, right? Oh, I can't lose weight. It's about my thyroid. Maybe I have hypo or hyperthyroidism. It's possible, and that's why we do the testing, right? So the main thyroid hormones that we're looking at are TSH and free T3 and T4, okay? Now, TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, that actually signals the thyroid to produce hormones that regulate metabolism. Makes sense, right? You can think of TSH as kind of like your thermostat. Any imbalances in TSH can lead to fatigue, weight gain, and brain fog pretty quickly and pretty easily. Now, free T3 and free T4, those control metabolic rate and energy levels. Free T3 is the active thyroid hormone that regulates metabolism and helps to convert food into energy. Free T4 will help, but is not the active. It's not the main player when it comes to this, but both of them are very important. And that's why we look at both of them on hormone testing. And then lastly, the antibody TPO-AB. This indicates autoimmune issues. So if you present with this, of which 15% of individuals do have these antibodies, that means that you have some potential autoimmune issues that can lead to fatigue and can lead to weight gain. Again, what we're talking about here is getting the information you need first about your hormone misfiring patterns and then addressing them with good nutrition and good exercise plans. Now, one of the people I worked with also, Susie, she came to me because she was just tired of it. She actually was tired. She had low energy, brain fog, gaining weight and gaining body fat. You see the pattern here? You see, like every example I've given that people I've worked with so far, very similar symptoms. And that is what we see when we have hormone misfiring patterns. So when we looked at her hormone test data, we saw that she had a high TSH, low T3, low T4, and low vitamin D, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Obviously her thyroid hormones were not functioning properly. They were misfiring. So what we did was specifically we looked at some thyroid nutrition interventions. We looked at including foods that had more iodine and selenium and zinc. We also made sure her protein was where it needed to be, and specifically getting complete proteins with all of the amino acids, because one of those in particular, tyrosine, is a precursor to make thyroid hormone. So we needed to make sure her protein intake was good. We also wanted to make sure she was optimizing her blood sugar, because that is a big thing for thyroid hormone firing patterns. We want to make sure she's combining the right type and right amount of carbohydrates to protein and fat. So once we did all that, in 4 weeks, we saw that she had no more brain fog. She had more energy and her clothes fit better and she was happier in her body. Now, I don't know about you, but if you would have asked me, "Hey, are you happy in your body?" when I was in my 20s or 30s, I would have laughed at you. I wouldn't know what you're talking about. But now I'm in my fifth level of life, and you say, "Are you happier in your body?" I can relate to that, because you either are and you're not. And if you get it, you get it, right? You know exactly what I'm talking about. So when she says she was happier in her body, you understand exactly what she means. And that to me was actually, I mean, in addition to brain fog and energy, that one statement, "I was happier in my body," that meant the world to me. And to me, that was probably even more important than any associated weight loss, because she had increased self confidence. Amazing. Okay, let's move on to DHEAS. So, this is actually a precursor hormone that contributes to the production of other hormones, specifically the sex hormones, testosterone and estrogen. It influences overall hormonal balance and also plays a crucial role in boosting energy levels. But it also helps with physical performance, fitness, and exercise, and improves your mood. Wow, right? Unfortunately, this is one of those hormones that decreases with age. It does in just about everybody, right? As we see an age-related decrease in DHEAS, we see more fatigue, loss of vitality, just more like chronic fatigue, chronic stress. It is very difficult to maintain this level because there are no direct foods that increase DHEAS, right? This requires supplementation, but I would not go off and just like have this measured and say, "Oh, I'm just going to supplement DHEAS if it's low." Don't do that, because you need a qualified expert to look at all the other hormones that I've been talking about to see the patterns, right? These hormones all interact with each other in all the different pathways. So you don't want to just jump to a conclusion, say, "Oh, this is low, therefore I need to supplement," right? But I will say that from a nutrition perspective, food only, this is a tough one. What's not tough is testosterone. So testosterone, and yes, we males and females have testosterone. Obviously, males have more testosterone than females. So if we're talking about the functions of testosterone, we know the first one, right? It plays a crucial role in building muscle mass, right? And what do we know about all of these symptoms we're talking about? Weight gain, body fat accumulation, right? Even brain fog. Some of these things are related to muscle mass. So we actually want higher levels of testosterone to help improve our muscle mass, help our body composition, and help reduce the age related loss of muscle. And that is called sarcopenia. So, unfortunately, like DHEAS, testosterone also decreases with age, specifically with males. So, when we see that, I see a lot of males in their 40s, especially in their 50s and 60s. That is when the fat gets distributed a little differently. So now they're seeing a little bit more bulge around their waist, like love handles are growing a little bit, like that spare tire, right? That's usually one of the reasons is just testosterone. We're having some hormone misfiring with testosterone. And that is affecting where the fat is distributed. It's also increasing the fat distribution and affecting energy levels, because we know that as testosterone decreases, so does energy levels, and more fatigue and irritability, and you just don't feel motivated. So now, you think about it, Now you don't want to work out because you're not motivated and you don't want to do anything. So you just eat more or you eat different foods that contribute to a larger waistline, let's say. And now you're not working out because you have no motivation. So again, hormone misfiring. And a great example of this is I worked with a male Ironman athlete, Chris. He came to me because he was so frustrated. He was the heaviest he has ever been in his life. And this is a competitive Ironman athlete, right? So he came to me, he's like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm eating the same. I'm eating the same. I'm training for an Ironman, for goodness sake. Why am I not losing weight? Well, first thing in my mind, we need to get your hormones measured, right? And guess what we found? Low testosterone, low DHEAS, and actually his cortisol curve was showing signs of chronic stress. So, what did we do? Well, interestingly, we not only had his hormone test done, but we also measured his metabolic efficiency at my performance center in Colorado. And what we found was that he was not as efficient at burning fat as he thought he should have been as a competitive Ironman athlete, right? So again, I created all of this wonderful, meal plans, exercise. I tweaked his Ironman training a little bit. And what I also did with testosterone is I made sure he was getting enough protein because that affects testosterone and healthy fats, specifically omega-3 fats, those anti-inflammatory fats you find in like fatty fish. Both of those help with testosterone levels in addition to cruciferous vegetables. Now, cruciferous vegetables will actually detoxify excess estrogen. So if there are signs of excess estrogen from the hormone test, we can use cruciferous vegetables at the same time to try to get the hormones back in balance again. And then there are two other nutrients, zinc and vitamin D, that I absolutely made sure that he was having not only in his nutrition, but also in his supplement plan. Because again, this is about creating a good nutrition meal plan, exercise plan, lifestyle plan, and with that includes supplementation when needed. And what happened at the end of 4 weeks? Amazing. He lost 8 pounds. So he was on his way to actually losing weight again, right? And then because we measured his metabolic efficiency, we knew quantitatively that in that 4 weeks, he actually increased his fat burning through the roof, right? At his resting fat burn increased by 55%, and his exercise fat burn via running on a treadmill increased by 25%. Listen, I have not seen those numbers before in 20 plus years of doing this. That was just amazing. And that's just testament how much changing nutrition and tweaking the exercise and adding the right supplements for the right reasons at the right time can actually make improvements in a body. Okay, let's move on to the other sex hormones, estrogen and progesterone. So, yes, we're talking still about males and females, but predominantly more females now. So, what do these do? Well, they help with mood, sleep, body fat distribution, right? Those are those are key things that those are involved with. So, we know that both of these significantly influence mood, right? It helps regulate emotions, relief from anxiety when they are firing correctly. Now, we also know that there's a line to restful sleep. So when these are actually misfiring, we see a lot of females who have insomnia, cannot sleep through the night, have disrupted sleep cycles, right? This could literally be as easy as just an estrogen and progesterone imbalance, and that ratio is a little bit off. You see this a lot with peri to menopausal females kind of making that shift where their sleep patterns get really, really wonky. It's likely caused by these two hormones being a little bit imbalanced. That is why it is so important, again, to have hormones measured. Okay, lastly, body fat distribution. Yes, females, if you're listening, you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? I've seen this in every single female over 40 that I've worked with who have disrupted or misfiring patterns of estrogen and progesterone, and that is fat increasing around the waist specifically. So we know that fast fat distribution again changes. We know it increases the body fat accumulation. And listen, I'm not going to use the word easy in any of this, but it is easier to actually formulate a plan when you know what's happening inside your body. Now, Interestingly, when we're looking at nutrition interventions to improve estrogen and progesterone based on what you're seeing on the test, right? Because you can see low estrogen, higher progesterone, or vice versa, or even low, right? What we look at nutritionally is a customized approach. So I'm going to list some of the nutrition interventions, but again, please take this as more general because you really have to determine what nutrition route to go based on the hormone test results themselves. But number one is cruciferous vegetables. I told you about this in testosterone, and those can detoxify the body when there's too much estrogen, right? Also, trying to get rid of alcohol and any processed soy products. Those are not good for estrogen and progesterone production. Also looking at B vitamins, because B vitamins specifically, whether from food and or supplementation, if that's necessary, those can actually help increase progesterone. So if progesterone is needed to get bumped up a little bit, B vitamins are super helpful with that. And lastly, hydration. So hydration is important for all hormones, right? And specifically estrogen, progesterone, because we're talking about metabolic changes when the body is in a dehydrated state. So interestingly enough, another client I worked with, Cindy, she presented with estrogen dominance based on her hormone test results. So more estrogen than progesterone. But here's the interesting thing. She came to me and I looked at her dietary habits and I was blown away. Like she was eating pretty spot on, metabolically efficient, controlling her blood sugar, all that stuff. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. She was also exercising frequently. So I'm like, wow, what am I going to do? Well, I didn't know what to do until we had her hormone test results, which again provided the data that she was estrogen dominant. And that allowed me to structure her meal and exercise plan for that particular reason. And previously, even eating well and exercising well, she wasn't able to lose weight. Well, guess what? Once we figured some different foods and different meal patterns and different exercise types into her daily program, she was actually able to lose a couple pounds and an inch off her hips. That was tremendous opportunities of growth for her because her energy level came back. She also had brain fog initially, gone, gone in 4 weeks. So again, all of this, what I'm saying is when we look at hormones, we can actually, they tell a story, right? They tell a story about what's going on in your body. And that is actually why it's so important to one, have them measured, and two, to stop eating the way you used to, because you're not going to get the same results. Okay. Vitamin D is the last hormone we're going to pick on. And yes, vitamin D is actually a hormone, even though it's called a vitamin. So vitamin D does a lot of different things in the body. Here are just a few functions of it. We're talking about mood, immune functioning, and energy levels. So, the sunshine vitamin, vitamin S or vitamin D, right? It's essential for maintaining mood because, listen, and you've seen this before, right? If you live in a place that does not get a lot of sun, or you don't get outside anymore or that much, and you're very affected by that seasonal affective disorder, that can create more feelings of sadness and fatigue. Now, from an immune function standpoint, we know that people need a good amount of vitamin D to keep a very healthy immune system functioning. I would say, especially when it's winter time, if that's where you live actually has a designated winter where it gets a little bit colder, right? So our body needs more vitamin D to help fight off all these infections and all these invaders that are coming into our body. And then lastly, energy levels. And nobody really thinks about this. Like, oh, I don't have a lot of energy. Maybe your vitamin D is low. And I tell you what, with everybody I've measured with vitamin D, I don't have the exact statistics, but I would say at least 80 to 90% are deficient. And please know this on the side, that when you see your vitamin D level on a report, if you've had it measured before, that's just a lab generated population standard, right? That range. So it's usually 30 to 100 in the United States, right? If you're less than 50 or 60, you have vitamin D deficiency in my book, right? I kind of bump that up a little bit because we don't want you to be in the 30s or 40s. That's way too low, right, for optimal functioning. So when we're looking at all this, especially based on where you live, but what's going on in your body, be it chronic fatigue or energy level, brain fog, weight gain, we really want vitamin D levels to be above that 50 or 60 mark. Again, that's in US units that I'm talking about. So vitamin D is part of the picture. when we look at all of these things that are potential problems and pain points in our life that we have all gone through, I've had every single one of these pop up since I have turned 40, right? More so since I've been in my 50s, but weight loss problems, body fat loss, brain fog, sugar cravings, chronic fatigue, poor sleep patterns, all of those are related to hormonal misfiring patterns. And again, I'm not going to say it's easy to fix those, but it's easier once you actually have the test results, because then you know what you're working with. Then you can have someone interpret them properly, but also create a plan. And remember, the plan needs to be nutrition, exercise, supplement, and lifestyle based. So hopefully you have an idea now of how these hormones interact with each other and why it's so important to test, don't guess. It is absolutely possible for you to take control of your health. Absolutely 100%. But you know what? There's a lot of things that go into this, right? If all of this has resonated with you and you're like, hey, you know what? I need some help here, right? This is a lot of stuff. I've got a lot of things going on with me. Maybe I can't lose weight, or maybe I'm gaining fat. I don't know. I don't know what to do, right? If you're like one of the people that I present in here, my examples, my case studies, reach out to me. I would love to be your guide in this. And in fact, I have two signature programs that actually, this is every single client that I showed you as examples in here have gone through my signature programs. And those are the FatBurn Blueprint Program or the Virtual FatBurn Blueprint Program. So virtual means you can't visit me in Colorado, whereas the original one means you're going to visit me in Colorado. We're going to do some extra testing, some metabolic efficiency testing. But here's the thing. I am here, like I am a guide to help you burn more fat, to lose weight, to not follow fad diets, to help your brain fog, your cognitive functioning, your fatigue. And here's the thing. I want to help you actually improve your health and longevity. This is what I do as a performance dietitian. This is what I get so excited about because I have helped hundreds of people in your shoes, including myself. I gave my personal example in the beginning, right? It is possible to do once you have the information, once you have the hormone information, once you have genomics testing, and actually that's on the side, but I do genomics testing too to help me create even better customized meal and exercise programs, right? But then also adding some metabolic efficiency testing to it. So once you have that data, it's great. That's step one. Step two is to have it interpreted, which is also great. But listen, if you go to someone who doesn't know how to create a plan, and I would just say plans from your interpretation of your data, then you know what? It's probably not going to get you to the point where you want to be. So you're probably going to be walking around just as frustrated as you were beforehand. So my recommendation would be have the hormone testing done at the very least. Have someone who is very knowledgeable in interpreting it, but also knowledgeable in creating plans, nutrition, exercise, supplement, and lifestyle plans. This will help you tremendously with whatever health and longevity goals you have. And listen, if you are interested in working with myself or one of the energy performance dietitians on my staff with the Fat Burn Blueprint Program or the Virtual Fat Burn Blueprint Program, all I want you to do is click the link below, submit an application. Why is there an application? Here's the thing. When we work with someone in these programs, we are 100% game on committed. And we just want to make sure you are also committed to yourself at the same time. That's the purpose of the application. It is literally a 3-minute application. It does not take long, but what we want you to do is we just want to see if you're ready and how ready you are. We want to make sure that you're going to give it your all because we give it our all 100% of the time in both of these 12-week programs. So I hope you gained a lot of great information from this webinar. At the very least, now you know a little bit more about hormone misfiring, how these hormones work together. And I gave you some interesting nutrition tidbits and kind of associated interventions that you could try to do based on your hormone misfiring patterns. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate it.